Hello, what is up guys? It is Keegan here, and today I am bringing you week number 5 of the BBR. Today we're playing against Kyle A. Two teams that are 3-1 going into this week, so a massive week for both teams. Kyle likely locks up playoffs given that he doesn't, lose a million differential over the course of his last 3 weeks if he wins this. If I win, my differential is still a little bit behind, some work left to do, but differential will always matter, figure itself out by the end of the season as long as you keep winning. If you guys are enjoying the BBR, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have not already. That really helps out the channel, and I do really appreciate the support. Before we get into Kyle A's team this week, we have a transaction, actually. A really minor one, but one that I want to talk about a little bit before we get too deep into it. So the main thing we're going to talk about here is the Terra VOLCARONA change that we made for this week. And for the rest of the season, we are removing Terra Fire and going to Terra Water. And the main reason for this is Terra Fire really doesn't give you much in prep, and we found that every time that it's come up as a potential option, Terra Fairy usually just ends up being better, or staying in the base form ends up being better than using Terra Fire. A lot of the calcs if Terra Fairy and Terra base form can't sweep in a matchup, Terra Fire usually isn't unlocking those matchups, and an additional typing, is going to open up, especially in this matchup we're going to see, is going to open up a lot more potential for VOLCARONA in this team. So Terra Water is going to be what we're going for, and that just helps break through, bulky fires that could come into the way. And Skeledirge in this matchup is going to be the one that, pushes us into Terra Water. But let's not waste any time. Let's get into Kyle A's team. So let's get into Kyle's team for this week. He has Baxcalibur, which can be Terra Dragon or Terra Electric, Skeledirge, Cleavior, Meloetta, Breloom, Dashbun, Goodra Hisui, Quillfish Hisui, Electros, Gastrodon, and the Hawlucha. Very interesting matchup this week. Baxcalibur is really tough to manage for my team. We're kind of in a situation where he can't really switch into my threats, and I can't really switch into his threats. Kind of seems like a similar theme in Gen 9 draft, but Baxcalibur is really tough for me to manage, and you'll see the Pokemon we bring to actually manage a lot of these situations. Really interesting Pokemon, and really interesting set. Skeledirge is a really good Pokemon. This was honestly the first thing that came to mind to think to go to Terra Water, was this a matchup, and kind of help solve future matchup problems as well. Garganacl in week 1 could have been a really good opportunity to have Terra Water VOLCARONA as well, though Terra Fairy probably still ends up being better. Garganacl teams could but an opportunity for that as well. So that's going to be one of the Pokemon we bring this week is Terra Water. And then something like Meloetta, Cleavior, Hawlucha, just kind of generally difficult for me to manage defensively. Kyle, for example, just really can't switch into Dragapult. That's, a very common theme. He does have stuff like Goodra Hisui that can come in, over time, but not really something that can come in long term. Cleavior really hard to manage as well. But once again, he can't really, beat VOLCARONA, Quiverdance. In the builder, it's difficult for him. You'll see there's some ways for him to play around it in this matchup, but he'll have to do some scouting, and I'll have to get some chip. Obviously, Dragapult very good as well for me here, and then Iron Hands as well has some interesting application here. So let's not waste any time, and let's get right into the team. Alright, this is the team we are going to be bringing this week against Kyle on the left. We bring the top 3 again. This is pretty much the same team that we brought last time, actually, against J-Bear, the same 6, but we had the Diancie now instead of a Cryogonal. But let's get right into these Pokemon, and let's see what they do. We have Safety Goggles Dragapult here. Modest set, and the reason we're bringing this is a really good way to switch into Breloom. Breloom doesn't have a lot of opportunity to come in this matchup, certainly, but having a Safety Goggles user is very important for Spore Pokemon in general. I find it's really good to just have one on the team. It makes playing the game just that much simpler. Now, this doesn't have heavy duty boots, so we have to be mindful of the Quillfish Hisuian, and we're probably going to have to lead to protect against that to keep the health of this Dragapult alive in the mid game. But this is once again just really good switch in for Breloom. Modest Shadow Ball does a 2-hit KO against the Dash Bun, which is really important to lock that KO up. It's also Draco Meteor is very good at 2-hit KOing the Hisuian Quillfish, so this could be a potential lead option that we could look to secure in the matchup, or just a mid-game option. Obviously, we need to do it about 66% for that 2-hit KO to come to fruition. the speed here, Jolly Halucha is the speed tier that we are targeting for this week. And then obviously Sucker Punch just rounds out the set. We don't really have much use for anything else. So we can pick off Meloettas, we can pick off Baxcaliburs, and even potentially pick off certain unburdened Halucha sets depending on the situation. Next up, we have the Terra Water Volcarona. The first time we are bringing Terra Water this week is Quiver Dance, Terra Blast, Morning Sun, and Bugmas. And this is where I said that the Hisuian Gudra can actually wall this kind of effectively. I really do need to Quiver Dance a lot to get in front of that and take advantage of it. The speed is there primarily for the Jolly Baxcalibur. That's going to be a common theme in this team builder, that you're going to see a lot of the speed tier around that Pokemon. And then the 76 special attack, really all that's required to 2-hit KO the Skeledirge with Terra Blast, and then the rest just can be into bulk. So this is going to be one of our win conditions, but as I said, the Hisuian Gudra is going to have to be knocked out for this to be very, very effective in this matchup, and he might not necessarily bring it. It's really tough for it to come into a matchup with Dragapult, Iron Hands, Palisand even can have some decent application there. So it could be a Pokemon that he decides to sit, and especially against some Volcarona sets doesn't even prevent it from winning the game. So really, really tough matchup for the Hisuian Gudra, so banking out a little bit in that sense that it doesn't come. But if it does come, we do have plenty of ways to answer it. So that is, not of the main concern, but this, once again, really, really good win condition in this matchup. Payapa Berry Iron Hands. This is a really good way to check and to even lure the Meloetta here. So the Papa Berry, for that reason, and I can just close combat, just drop that thing immediately, and that's a huge problem out of the way in the mid game. The 56 HP, 20 defense, that's specifically for Meloetta to live 2 modest side shocks, and then the speed creep once again here actually outspeeds Skeledirge, and that allows you to do 2 Earthquakes to 2-hit KO Skeledirge. Not something that Kyle might be predicting in this matchup, for me to use Iron Hands as a way to check the Skeledirge. So really, really good, additional lure there. There's a lot of lure potential here on Iron Hands, to lull Kyle to a little bit of a false sense of security here. With stuff like the Meloetta and the Skeledirge. The 16 attack Adamant is really all you need to lock in a lot of the KOs here. So we just put the rest of the EVs in attack as well, just in case we get some random chip. It helps out as well. And then we max out in the Spit Apt, of course, because this is going to potentially lure in the Meloetta. And the Heavy Slam here is actually, because of that 16 attack, does get the 2-hit KO on Dash Bund as well, which is very, very important in this matchup. So a lot going on here. But primarily this is to lure stuff like the Meloetta, the Skeledirge, into pressure, stuff like the Dash Bun, and stuff like the Hisuian Gudra, for example. Next up we have Babiri Diancie, and the reason we have Babiri is this gives us another check to that Baxcalibur. Once again, that is one of the most important Pokemon in this matchup, and that lets me protect against Iron Head. Primarily, it could go Earthquake, that is a potential for this matchup, but likely just going to be the Iron Head. And the HP and defense, really what it's there to do is it just gives me the best potential opportunity to live as many of these hits as possible. So stuff like +1 Iron Head after 3 rocks, +2 Iron Heads after rocks about like 80% of the time. Sometimes +2 Earthquake, and then maybe +1 Earthquake after rocks. So there's a few different things that it does here. The moveset, Spikes, once again, Spikes is actually pretty decent in this matchup. If you look at stuff like the Hisuian Gudra, for example, that really does not appreciate that, and where our Terra Volcarona doesn't actually have a way to kill it, doesn't have an efficient way to kill it. It's actually really, really going to be important for that Pokemon to force it into bad positions often. So Spikes is, if this ends up being just a defensive pivot, if we get the Baxcalibur early through the Uxie game plan, then that's going to be really, really important there. But that's basically what this Pokemon is going to do: set up some hazards and potentially lure the Baxcalibur if need be. Next up, we have kind of the most interesting Pokemon of the week here, Choice Scarf Uxie. So in terms of all of the game plan kind of revolving around the Baxcalibur, this is kind of the quintessential kind of aspect of that. So if Baxcalibur comes on anything and tries to set up, the game plan is always go hard Uxie and just click Encore on the setup. So that'll give me basically a free turn to go right into Dragapult, and if he stays in and just starts setting up, I can drop a Draco on it, I can drop a Draco on the switch in, and this is just the most efficient way to prevent setup Baxcalibur from just running away with this game. If they elect to just attack, or, I can come in on, Baxcalibur for free, I can just start clicking foul plays as well to deal a lot of damage. And then U-turn, obviously, just to, get some scouting. And, it's a U-turn. I'm going to click it as often as I can in this matchup to maintain momentum for my Pokemon like Iron Hands and Dragapult. Mystical Power is also another interesting, move here. This, allows me to 2-hit KO max HP Hawlucha. And that can also just, after that Pulse and Mickey sweeps here, that puts me to +2 on Choice Scarf. Like, that opens up some potential endgame scenarios as well, which might not necessarily, be prepared for. Mystical Power, Choice Scarf, Uxie, not really something I assume that'll be top of Kyle's mind here. The 240 HP and 40 defense specifically allows me to live Terra Dragon, Glaive Rush after some rocks and some poison damage. So, not that I expect to get poisoned. I mean, it's a potential, just randomly, but really, really important, to live after rocks, and that allows me to foul play, to do some damage in those scenarios if he just decides to attack. And a lot of those potentials are going to come up, especially after Encore is revealed. It's going to force into playing a lot differently around that move specifically. And then the outspeed is once again for +1 Jolly Baxcalibur, because we have to make sure we get that Encore off as early as possible. Last Pokemon here is the Palisand Rocky Helmet. HP defense just allows me to live Banded Adamant Night Slash from Cleavor after a couple rocks hits, so allows me to deal some damage to that as well. Self Rock Sharp, Earth Power, and Sludge Bomb. Rocks once again important in this matchup to whittle down my opponent's team. The Spit F here really important here, as it prevents 2-hit KO from Monosasumi Gudra. Which, potentially this is a Pokemon we have to switch into that with, and then Shore Up will allow me to just take that on indefinitely. And then the rest in special attack here just allows me to put off some powerful Earth Powers and Sludge Bombs on common switch-ins. But that is the team. Really interesting matchup here against Kyle. Two teams that can really attack well against each other, and we're both going to have to get really creative on the defensive side, because neither of us can really switch into our opponent's teams that well. So this matchup is going to be really critical, a few real key turns, preventing Baxcalibur from going crazy on my team, and then allowing myself a position to win with Terra Volcarona in the late game, given that we can take down stuff like the Hisuian Gudra, and, break through stuff like the Quillfish as well. That's going to be something that could potentially wall my Volcarona in the mid to late game, but likely that'll be something that, just gets picked off throughout the game just as a result of it being a hazard setter, and likely going to have to take a lot of damage to set up those hazards. So that is the team. I'll see you guys for the battle tomorrow.